بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على المبعوث رحمة للعالمين سيدنا مولانا وحبيبنا وقرة أعيننا قائد الغر المحجبين وشفيع المذنبين وسيد ولد آدم ولا فخر محمد ابن عبد الله ابن عبد المطلب الهاشمي القرشي وعلى آله وأصحابه وأزواجه ومن اهتدى بهديه واستنى بسنته وانتهج نهجه إلى يوم الدين. تركنا عن محجة البيضاء ليلها كنهارها لا يزيغ عنها إلا هالك. وبعد. So, alhamdulillah, we continue from our sessions entitled The Journey is the Destination, the path of the Arifin, the path of the knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we are currently reading about spiritual discipline and spiritual rectification and spiritual purification, which is one of the ways, and in fact it's indeed is the way of the Arifin and the way of the Muqarrabin, the way of the knowers of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the way of the Muqarrabin, those who are brought close by God to Him by spiritually purifying themselves, by removing their doubts and their contentions about the qadr, about the decree of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and in that manner they will gain a greater knowledge of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because it's an issue of takhliya thumma tahliya, as they say. So removing the spiritual impurities and the spiritual veils that are within us are the veils of the ego, which include jealousy and envy and enmity and rancor and love of praise and love of riyasa, love of being in charge. These are all things that are impediments and obstacles to having a more profound and deeper relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, as we mentioned in the previous session, one of the ulama, Arifin al-Tamsani, he defined al-riyada, which we're currently reading about, or spiritual discipline and refinement, as تمرين النفس على قبول الصدق. تمرين النفس على قبول الصدق. To train the nafs, train the ego, you, so that it may now accept the sidq, right? It may now enter in a place of sidq, a place of utmost sincerity, a place of complete sincerity, a place of trustworthiness. And I could also say, على قبول الحق, to accept the haqq, and the haqq and the truth and the real is that you have shortcomings, and that were it not for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help you overcome your shortcomings, you would still have them and they would remain with you. And all we have, and we are the fuqara, we are the ones who are in complete need of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All we have is that we beseech Him and we implore Him, and we try to avail ourselves of the rahmah, of the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So, if those of you have the book, I'm reading from page 72, more or less at the top of the page, at the second line, right after the verse that we read yesterday. يقول المصنف رحمه الله ونفعنا بعلومه في الدارين آمين ورضي الله عنا وعنهم وعنكم وإياك أن تكون كمن رسخ حب الدنيا في قلبه حتى ذهب بنور بصيرته ولا تلقي جلباب الحياء من وجهك وتأكل دنياك بدينك وتقتحم القبائح بعد العلم وتغلب شهوتك على عقلك وجهلك على علمك وتتعدى من الحدود ما علمت ولا يردك عن شهوتك نهي ولا يبعدك عن المحارم ورع ولا يؤخرك عن السمع صمت فلابد لهذه الصفة المذمومة من رجال يحملونها وتكون لطبائعهم موافقة ولو قطعت أيديهم وأرجلهم عليها ما تركوها ولا يجدون لها بدلا ولا يبغون عنها حولا ولا لها عوضا ولو قبضوا رأوا العيان ثم ردوا لعادوا لما طبعوا عليه وإليه الإشارة بقوله تعالى ولو ردوا لعادوا لما نهوا عنه وإنهم لكاذبون. So as we're reading, we just as kind of maybe an academic or a side note, we see that the style of the author is basically a tafsir so far, in this section at least. So he kind of, but he does the opposite. So usually in tafsir, in exegesis of the Quran, we're used to seeing the verse and then an explanation of the verse afterwards. He kind of does the opposite. He more or less brings the explanation of the verse and ties it into the main subject matter, which is spiritual refinement, and then he says, here is the verse that pertains to it, which I think is kind of interesting and unique and let's say, يشوق القارئ. It kind of makes the reader, pulls them in and interested to see, oh, so all that, and then, what do you get all that from? And then he brings the verse. So I think it's, he was muwaffaq. In other words, he was given divine success in the way he did it. And I won't say that he was clever, because if we said he's clever, then we say that's something about him, but I think it's more about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala giving him success. So he says, إِيَّاكَ أَن تَكُونَ كَمَنْ رَسَخَ حُبِّ الدُّنْيَا فِي قَلْبِي. And he mentioned this earlier. Don't be like the people, or avoid being like the people, where the love of the dunya is firmly implanted. That's probably the word I'm looking for. رَسَخَ, implanted in their heart, to the degree that the light of their basira, the light of their spiritual insight, the light of their inner eye, dissipates or goes away. And do not take the cloak of modesty, right, jilbab al-haya, an wajhik. In other words, don't take off the cloak of modesty from your wajah, right, your countenance, not just your face, but your being. And then you ta'kul dunyaka bidinik. Ta'kul dunyaka bidinik. You sacrifice, is probably how I would say it, you sacrifice your deen for the sake of the dunya. وَتَقْتَحِمَ الْقَبَائِحْ بَعْدَ الْعِلْمِ. Right? And you enter into ugliness after knowledge of what the ugliness is. وَتُغَلِّبْ شَهْوَتَكَ عَلَى عَقْلِقْ. And then you follow your passions, your shahawat, تُغَلِّبْهَا عَلَى عَقْلِقْ. Right? And then you kind of put that aside and you don't look at your intellect and you just follow your passions and your desire. And your ignorance over your knowledge. وَتَتَعَدَّ مِنْ الْحُدُودِ مَا عَلِمْتَ. And then you transgress upon the parameters of the bounds and you are aware that you are doing it. وَلَا يَرُدُّكَ شَهْوَتُكَ وَيَرُدُّكَ عَنْ شَهْوَتِكَ نَهْيٌ. Right? So when the shahwa, and this is why the spiritual refinement is important, when the passions and the desires overwhelm you, then you can listen to all of the Quran in the world, you can listen to the mawa'id, you can listen to the admonitions, you can listen to the shaykh speaking, but all of that, لَيْسَ لَهُ صَدَى. Yani it's not going to have an impact on you if you are overwhelmed by this shahwa. وَلَا يُبْعِدُكَ عَنِ الْمَحَارِمِ وَرَعٍ. Right? And there no scrupulousness will keep you away from the maharim, from that which is haram. وَلَا يُؤَخِّرْكَ عَنِ السَّمْعِ صَمْتٍ. Right? And nothing will delay you from even your samt, from listening to the things you shouldn't listen to. Even your samt and your steadiness, because you don't have it, will stop you from doing that. فلابد لهذه الصفة المذمومة من رجال يحملونها وتكون طبائعهم موافقة. So there has to be people, he says rijal, and I should mention when he says rijal, here we're talking about rujula as a maqam, as a state of being. So a woman can have rujula or muru'a just like a man can. وَكَمْ سِتْ مِنْ بِأَلْفِ رَجُلٍ, as we always say. And how many women are like 1,000 men? So it needs people who are ready to carry this burden, right, and to go against their taba'a, go against their, their personal inclination, and so forth. So he said people who are like this, like in the verse, وَلَوْ رُدُّوا لَعَادُوا لِمَا نُهُوا عَنْهُ وَإِنَّهُمْ لَكَاذِبُونَ. So even if they were لَوْ رُدُّوا, right, even if they're pushed back, لَعَادُوا. So even if there is an admonition, even if there is wara, even if there is listening of Quran, ruddu, right? يردهم, it pushes them away or repels them from those maharim. ولكن لعادوا لما نهوا عنه وإنهم لكاذبون. But they go back to that which they've been prohibited from them. وإنهم لكاذبون. And unfortunately they are from the kathibun, or from those who are not truthful. This is Surah Al-An'am, ayah number 28. Then he says, وَعْلَمْ أَنَّ الشَّرَّ أَنْوَاعٌ مُخْتَلِفَةٌ, that evil is of different types. وكل نوع منها مطبوع ممزوج بطبيعة العبد كما يكون الصباغ الأسود مطبوعا ممزوجا بالثوب لا يفارقه ما بقيت من الثوب بقية. So these different types of evil and the different categories of it, it's ممضوع, مطبوع and ممزوج, right? It's almost like it's imprinted and thoroughly blended with the طبيعة, right? With the personal inclination of the servant. Just like the black dye will be imprinted and mixed with, you know, the colorless t-shirt or the colorless garment, but then as long as that garment remains, it will remain the color of whether it's red or yellow, whatever color it was dyed with, the dye doesn't go away. ما بقي من الثوب بقية ولو غسل ما نفع الماء بشيء ولو طال فيه مكثه. Even if you keep washing it, right, and try to wash the dye out, doesn't matter. No matter how long you keep it in the water, it's not going to be washed. فإن الطباع لا تذهب إلا بذهاب النفوس. Here is the important part. So this طباع, right, this implanted or imprinted inclination that we may have, that is a product of the nafs, the product of the ego, لا تذهب إلا بذهاب النفوس. It does not go away except with the dhahab of the nufus. It doesn't go away except by the nafs goes away. وكذلك أصل الشر إذا طبع في الطبيعة وكل ما طبع في العبد فباق فيه ولا زوال للطبيعة إلا بزوال الجسد. And the same thing, all of these things that have been imprinted in you, and they will stay with you and they will not go away except if you go away. So here he says, بِزَوَالِ الْجَسَدِ. So that's one way, you die, then all of that stuff goes away. But there's another way, which we'll get to in a second. ولذلك قيل كل طبيعة دخلت باللبن مع الروح تخرج واعتبر ما ذكرت لك في أظهر الخلق تجده كما ذكرت لك فإن فعل القبائح يزول إذا لم يكن مطبوعا في الطبيعة وإن كان مطبوعا فيها فلا زوال له إلا بالموت فإن الجسد والروح والنفس والطبيعة أساس العبد ولا يفترق واحد منها عن صاحبه إلا بالموت فإن الطبيعة مثل المزرعة وكل أرض تنبت ما زرع فيها من خير أو شر وإليه الإشارة بقول تعالى والبلد الطيب يخرج نباته بإذن ربه والذي خبث لا يخرج إلا نكدا. So here he's talking about this idea of طبيعة, and I'll just summarize. And he states that it doesn't go away, that which is kind of imprinted or implanted within you, except by you going away, by ذهاب النفس وهو الموت, and that is death. And so مع الروح تخرج, he says. So with the spirit, it goes out. And he said, if you think about even the worst people that you've known, it seems like no matter what you do, they're not going to change. They have this kind of imprinted in them. So he said, the body and the spirit and the nafs, the ego, the life force also, and the tabi'ah, right, and the kind of the personal inclination, asasul abd. This is the foundation of the servant of God, of who we are. وَلَا يَفْتَرُقُ وَاحْدٌ مِنْهَا عَنْ صَاحِبِهِ إِلَّا بِالْمَوْتِ. And these things, in terms of what they actually are, the khilqah, don't go away. In other words, what it is, not what it does, but what it is, doesn't go away except by death. فَإِنَّ الطَّبِيعَةَ مِثْلُ الْمَزْرَعَةِ. Right? It's like a planted field that we said. كُلُّ أَرْضٍ وَكُلُّ أَرْضٍ تُنْبِتُ مَا زُرِعَ فِيهَا مِنْ خَيْرٍ أَوْ شَرٍ. So every plotted land or earth then will only grow, will come out, that which has been buried within it. So whatever seeds you planted, that's what will come out. If you never bother to cultivate the field, or to seed it properly, or to irrigate it, then weeds will come out, right? Ugly things will come out, or things that you don't have any control over. And they even say, even if trees come out, and palm trees were to come out, the metaphor they say, well, if you just let it grow by itself and there's no ri'ayah, right, you don't take care of it, and you don't cultivate it, and you don't prune it, and you don't watch after it, it may grow, but it won't bear fruit. In order for it to bear fruit, and this is definitely the case with palm trees, you have to pay attention. You have to maintain it. You have to take care of it. You have to cultivate it, right? So we're talking about spiritual cultivation here. And he brings up the verse from Surah Al-A'raf, ayah 58, البلد والبلد الطيب, so the good balad, the good town, يخرج نباته بإذن ربه. In nabat, right, that which grows upon it will come out by the permission of its Lord. وَالَّذِي خَبُثَ لَا يَخْرُجُ إِلَّا نَكِدًا. Right, وَالَّذِي خَبُثَ, and that which is not tayyib, that which is khabith, that which is impure, لَا يَخْرُجُ إِلَّا نَكِدًا. You only find impure things come out of it. So we can change though, right? And if we work on this nufus, then even the way that our inclinations go, right? And تصديقا لقول النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم لا يؤمن أحدكم حتى يكون هواه تبعا لما جئت به. None of you has true iman or complete iman till his hawa, till his caprice is in agreement with that which I have come with. So you can even have your hawa, where it seems to you like your hawa, seems to you like your caprice, but actually you will find it naturally wanting to follow the way of Muhammad صلى الله عليه وسلم. وَعَلَمَ أَنَّ اللَّهَ يَرْزُقُ الْبَرَّ وَالْفَاجِرَ فَمَا رُزِقْتَ مِنْ نِعْمَةٍ فَاشْكُرْهَا وَلَا تُغَيِّرْ نِعْمَ اللَّهِ بِمَعَاصِيهِ فإن شر الرجال من يمن الله عز وجل عليه بما يحب وهو مقيم على معاصيه ويفرح بما يبسط له من النعم ولا تزجره تذكره عن معصية الله تعالى وإليه الإشارة بقوله تعالى فلما نسوا ما ذكروا به فتحنا عليهم أبواب كل شيء حتى إذا فرحوا بما أوتوا أخذناهم بغتة فإذا هم مبلسون. So he says, know that the rizq, and this is also the theology, that rizq is not limited to only people who obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So sustenance is not limited to people who only obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gives His rizq, His sustenance, to what people need to live, to those who obey God and those who don't obey God. That's why it's almost like a moot point to ask Allah to give you your sustenance. It's like you're reminding Him about something He already promised that He's going to give to you, right? لا نسألك رزقا نحن نرزقك والعاقبة للتقوى. لا نسألك رزقا, we don't ask you to sustain yourselves. نحن نرزقك, Allah will take care of you. والعاقبة للتقوى, but العاقبة, that which is you are requested of and will come after, للتقوى, right? Is to follow the commands and avoid the prohibitions of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So both al-bar wal-fajr, so the righteous person and the not so righteous person, al-fajr, the corrupt person, both will have their rizq. So he said, that which you have been given from blessings, be grateful and don't change the blessings of Allah. In other words, don't change the consistent giving of blessings to you, because you can do that. إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِقَوْمٍ حَتَّى يُغَيِّرُ مَا بِأَنفُسِهِمْ. Allah will not change the condition of the people unless they change their own condition within themselves. And this can be understood one of two ways. The second way is what he's meant here. So if you're in a state of bliss and a state of ease, and then you change, you start disobeying Allah or you lose sight of God, then Allah may change your condition and He may give you hardship, He may give you difficulty. And also the other way to understand it, the reverse, which is if you are not in a state of bliss and you're in a state of ma'asi, in a state of disobedience, if you change that within yourself, then Allah will help you to change as well, inshallah. So when he says لا تغير نعم الله بمعاصي, don't change Allah's giving you of blessings by your sins. فإن شر الرجال من يمن الله عز وجل عليه بما يحب وهو مقيم على معاصيه. The worst of people is the one that Allah gives so much to and that which they love, and at the same time they still disobey Him. And this is referred to in the verse from Surah Al-An'am, also ayah 44. فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ, from when they forgot that which they have been reminded of these blessings of Allah, فَتَحْنَا عَلَيْهِمْ أَبْوَابَ كُلِّ شَيْءٍ, then we open the doors of everything for them. حَتَّى إِذَا فَرِحُوا بِمَا أُوتُوا, until they are so happy with that which they have given, أَخَذْنَاهُمْ بَغْتَةً فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْلِسُونَ, then the comeuppance comes, بَغْتَةً, right? They were not expecting it, بَغْتَةً, surprised. فَإِذَا هُمْ مُبْلِسُونَ, then they are left with nothing. And this is kind of a tafsir of what we talked about earlier about istidraj. So what is nihayat al-istidraj? If you don't change, if you don't find your way back, the end game, as it were, of Allah giving you pause and giving you a pause and giving you a chance, but you're not taking that chance, and then instead of giving you mihan and tribulations, He may give you blessings and ease, And then you find yourself fooling yourself, so to speak, that, well, if Allah didn't like me, then He'd take these things away or take these things away. Not necessarily. It's enough that you think like that. That's enough that Allah took that away from you. That's why the Salihin, they would say, it's enough that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala yaslub minni ladhat al-ta'a. It's enough that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may take away from me even the pleasure I find in my ibadah and in the pleasure of seeking out Allah and the pleasure in dhikr. So one of the litmus tests that you can do to see where you are with all of this is, how are you when you approach Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? How do you approach the prayer? How do you approach dhikr? How do you make tasbih? Do you do it every day or do you do it begrudgingly? How do you approach tilawat al-Qur'an? Do you even read a little bit of the Qur'an every day, even if it's half a page or one page? Or do you only read it when you feel like you need to read it? These are hard questions one has to ask themselves, but they are the true questions. And if you find you don't like the answer that you have, and then you say within yourself, but I have a good heart, I'm good to people, that may well be so, but are you observing the haqq? Are you observing the rights of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala? He's giving you this way, He's made it easy for you, He's giving you, facilitated for you, but are you trying to follow that way? Or have you become complacent in kind of your own comfort zone? And that's one of the worst places to be, this complacency, just to feel like everything's fine and I don't need to do any better, I don't need to strive, and you know, I still have all the things that I want to have, and I have all of the possessions and material things that I always wanted to acquire, so that must be a good sign. Maybe a good sign, maybe a bad sign, as we said. It can either be a trial or tribulation for you, or it could be a blessing for you. If it brings you to God, it's a blessing. If it takes you away from Him, it's a trial. Simple as that. Then he says, وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تُصُمَّ بِشَهْوَتِكَ فِي الدُّنْيَا سَمْعَ قَلْبِكَ عَنِ الْمَوَاعِظِ فإن الانكباب على الحظ العاجل وقبول القلب على الفاني ونأيه عن الإنذار دليل على قحط القلب من الجلال والعظمة وإليه الإشارة بقوله تعالى ولا يسمع الصم الدعاء إذا ما ينذرون. So looking at the verse and working our way back from Surah Al-Anbiya, ayah 45, ولا يسمع الصم الدعاء إذا ما ينذرون. As-sum, the one who is deaf or and can't hear, doesn't hear the dua, doesn't hear the call to God. إِذَا مَا يُنذَرُونَ, right? Even if they are warned about it. So he says, do not become deaf by virtue of your shahwa for the dunya, right? So there's physical deafness and then there's spiritual deafness. Spiritual deafness is when you are so overcome and munhamik, as they say, and indulgent of your passions, of your ahwa, of your desires, that you no longer hear the mawa'idh. وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُ اتَّقِ اللَّهَ أَخَذَتْهُ الْعِزَّةُ بِالْإِثْمِ فَحَسْبُهُ جَهَنَّمْ وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُ اتَّقِ اللَّهِ. Another litmus test I'll give you. If someone says to you or brings an admonition to you and says, اتَّقِ اللَّهَ يَا أَخِي أو يَا أُخْتِي, you know, have taqwa of Allah when you did this or you did that. أَخَذَتْهُ الْعِزَّةُ بِالْإِثْمِ أَخَذَتْهُ الْعِزَّةُ بِالْإِثْمِ. And you say, like, who are you to talk to me? Who are you? Are you, you know, do you have CD in front of your name, or Ustaz or Ustaza, and do you have a sheikh, or who are you to bring that to my attention? Are you even Muslim to even say something like that? And actually, do you know who I am? If all of these things run through your head, and even if you don't say them, be careful, because then you're not listening. One of the sifat al-Arifin is their sam'a, their microphone is always on. Their sam'a is microphone, thing that you hear with. Their headphones are always on. So they're always listening. What does that mean, they're always listening? It means that they are not going to deafen out anything that can possibly pertain to their own state, to their own hal. So they won't deafen out this person or that person when they bring some concern to them and say, oh, you know what, I think you made a mistake doing this, or I think you made a mistake doing that, or maybe there's another way you could have done this. Rather than dismissing it out of hand, they will say, maybe I should think about that, right? Because remember, their mu'amala, who they're dealing with, is not the person in front of them. They're dealing with Allah, and that means Allah sent them this person. So and this person may not be saying something that's true, maybe saying something that's false, but there's a ibrah, right? There's a lesson to be deciphered and to be learned in all of these things and all of these interactions. And just look at the way people deal with social media. It's just a complete free-for-all. It's a jungle. It's this sort of anarchism that has fallen into it, and anyone can say anything about anybody, and people are sharing private things that they may have had with somebody and making clips and taking them out of context and then putting them out there and then lambasting someone and then listing all of the things that make them a kafir based upon a 90-second clip or whatever that they saw. A'udhu billah. A'udhu billah. This is just in the past 2 or 3 days, as I said, that I've seen this. This is يعني ويحك يا أخي. I won't say waylak. أقول لك ويحك. Be careful. Be really, really, really careful. Because if you harm somebody, you harm someone's reputation, the honor of a person is like his blood. You harm somebody's honor, you do that to them, and you sully their reputation without just cause, and perhaps even if you have just cause, but you go beyond bounds in doing so, then you become the zalim. You're no longer the mazloom. You can go cry all you want about your mazlumiyya. You can cry all you want about how you're so mazloom, and people have wronged you, and this person did this, and this person did that. But the minute you flip that switch, and you bring it to the other side, and you've wronged somebody, even a little bit, أنت ظالم. وأقوله ملء فمي. I'll say it from the ramparts, as they say. أنت ظالم. So be really, really, and I'm not talking to anybody specifically. I'm talking to all those people out there who love to retweet things and share things and challenge people and bring all of this nonsense. Be really, really careful about people. Because we looked at the Aqidah section in the beginning, there will be a hisab. There will be a reckoning. كل شيء تكون محضرة. Everything will be brought. It will be like in the present. And if those people choose not to forgive you, they're going to take their right from you. And if you don't have enough extra hasanat, you don't have an extra good to kind of cover all of that with people, then they will throw their sayyi'at on you. وهذا في الحديث الصحيح. So if I have a lot of bad deeds and you wronged me and you don't have any good deeds left to give over to me, here, take my bad deeds. Unload. I'll unload on you. So not only have your own bad deeds, then you have other people's bad deeds that are going to fall upon you. So we have to be really, really, really careful about how we treat other people. And we treat their honor like it's their life. Character assassination is almost like physical assassination. You can completely disrupt and destroy somebody's life like that. Especially in an age where any fool who's playing, what's that game called? The one with the guns, Call of Duty. Anyone who's playing Call of Duty, right, and in their breaks between Call of Duty, they go on Facebook and, pick out all of the things that are kufr in people, then go back to Call of Duty or Grand Theft Auto or whatever it is that they're doing, or Fortnite, and then, go back and forth between those things. Any imbecile can do that, and everyone has a microphone, and everyone has not just a microphone, everyone has kind of like a big boom box speakerphone. Then be really, really careful what you put out there, because once you put it out, you can't take it back. Be extremely careful. And it's better to err on the side of caution. And even the qudat, the judges in our Islamic tradition, they would always say, it's better to let 1,000 guilty people go free than to condemn one innocent person. Better for 1,000 guilty people to go free than to condemn one innocent person. Why? Because 1,000 guilty people, they will get theirs with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So they're not really going free. But you condemn the innocent person in this life, and you disrupt their life, and you ruin their life, when are they going to get that back? So that's my admonition for today. So back to Al-Arifin Billah, they are not deaf to any criticism that comes their way. They're not deaf to, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي إِنَّ النَّفْسَ لَأَمَارَةٌ بِالسُّوءِ. Either Sayyidina Yusuf said that, وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي, right, and I can't say that, I'm completely innocent, I make mistakes. Or if it was Zulaykha, either way, القول حق, right, it is the العزيز يعني, the qawl is haq, that it is a kalimat haq, it is a word of truth, and that we should all take to heart. We should live this meaning. وَمَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي لَا أُبَرِّئُ نَفْسِي. I do not declare myself innocent. I am not above mistakes. I am not above shortcomings. I am not above offending people. I'm not above getting angry and making mistakes. We all have this. And to think because of who you know or who you think your teacher is or what masjid you go to or whose picture you've put on your Facebook profile with makes you somehow above all of that, then you're sorely deluded. Then he says, وَإِيَّاكَ أَن تَكُونَ إِرَادَةُ قَلْبِكَ تَبَعًا لِشَهْوَةِ نَفْسِكَ وتكون دنياك أحب إليك من آخرتك وقلبك من ذكر مولاك خاليا معرضا فإنها من صفة المهلكين. وإليه الإشارة بقوله تعالى فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا ذلك مبلغهم من العلم. So Surah Al-Najm, ayahs 29 and 30. Work our way back. فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا. So turn away from those, turn your back to those who have turned away from our remembrance. وَلَمْ يُرِدْ إِلَّا الْحَيَاةَ الدُّنْيَا. And they have not sought anything or have not sought anything except the life of the dunya. ذَلِكَ مَبْلَغُهُم مِّنَ الْعِلْمِ. This is all that they know. ذَلِكَ مَبْلَغُهُم. They don't know anything more than this, what they want from the dunya. So have a strong irada. Don't make your irada, your will, your intent of your heart, تَبْعًا لِشَهْوَةِ نَفْسِكَ. So in your free time, you spend your heart time, let's call it, what you think about and what you dream about, what you aspire to, things of the dunya. How am I going to buy this car, and how am I going to get this house, and how am I going to arrange this thing, and how am I going to get back at that person at work who did this thing to me and sent out that email and CC'd the boss and showed my mistake, and how am I going to get back at them. This is your time that you're using on your heart for frivolous things. Use it for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Otherwise, you may be like who's mentioned in this verse, the one الذي تولى عن ذكر ربه فأعرض عمن تولى عن ذكرنا ولم يرد إلا الحياة الدنيا. So it's like those two things to go together. No dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then it becomes مليء بالدنيا. Then it becomes filled with the seeking of the dunya. Or it becomes filled with seeking of the dunya, so he doesn't have time for the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. أعوذ بالله من ذلك. وطهر قلبك من الأدناس فإنه موضع نظر الله تعالى فإياك أن يرى فيه من الاعتقادات الخبيثة شيئا وطهره من القسوة والحسد والكبر وحب الجاه والشرف وحب المنزلة عند الناس وطول الأمل والفرح بالعاجل والغضب وحمية الجاهلية فإن هذه صفات تبعد العبد عن القرب من الله تعالى والعبد مسؤول عنها ومأخوذ بها وهي حرام كالميتة. وإليه الإشارة بقوله تعالى إن السمع والبصر والفؤاد كل أولئك كان عنه مسؤولا. Surah Al-Isra, ayah 36. Purify your heart from filth and impurities. This is the place of the divine gaze. This is what Allah looks to. And we've mentioned this hadith many times before. إن الله لا ينظر إلى صوركم ولا أجسادكم لكن ينظر إلى قلوبكم وأعمالكم. Allah doesn't look to your forms or your bodies, He looks to your hearts and your deeds. So Allah is looking at your heart. And what's in your heart, what you think about, is a type of deed. It is there are acts of the heart. So be careful about what enters into your heart. طهر قلبك. Purify your heart. من الأدناس, impure things. Allah is gazing upon it. Do not let Him see من الاعتقادات الخبيثة. Don't let Him see from vile beliefs, anything of that. And purify it from qaswa, from being hard and difficult with people. Qaswat al-qalb, having a hard heart. Wal hasad, and envy and jealousy and arrogance and love of prestige and love to be honored by people and having a place, love of having a place in people's hearts. These are all things that will lead you to al-mahalik. All things that will lead you astray and lead you to destruction. وطول الأمل. We talked about al-amal. You could die tomorrow. Don't think that it's far away. Don't have this false hopes. والفرح بالعاجل, right? And being happy with just al-ajil, that which has come to you in immediate form. when وجدت والغضب وحمية الجاهلية, right? And anger and the hamiyya of the jahiliyyah, which is to react and do based upon your anger or based upon your shahwa. That's what jahiliyyah really means. Yes, it's ignorance, but it's a type of emotive ignorance. It's like an emotional ignorance. So you just do whatever your passion, whether it's anger or whether it's desire, you just follow it. Amma al-Islam, wal-Iman, wal-Ihsan, no, it's to act upon principle. It's to act upon mabda, right? Something that's principled, something that's ethical, something that's sanctioned by the Sharia. This becomes your guide, not your emotions and your passions and your anger. فإن هذه صفات تبعد العبد. These are attributes that will bring you astray from the closeness to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. وَالْعَبْدُ مَسْئُولٌ عَنْهَا. And you will be asked about it and you're responsible for it. And these things are haram, like al-mayta, like eating a dead animal. It's haram. And then the verse, إِنَّ السَّمْعَ وَالْبَصَرَ وَالْفُؤَادَ كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. So you're going to be asked about what you heard and what you saw, and your fu'ad, what was in your heart. كُلُّ أُولَٰئِكَ. All of these things, كَانَ عَنْهُ مَسْئُولًا. You will be held responsible for all of them. وَلَا تَكُنْ عِبَادَتُكَ مرتبطة بالحظ العاجل. Don't let your ibadah become linked to fleeting moments in the dunya, right? Fleeting allotments, fleeting things that you achieve in the dunya. إن وجدت دنياك عبدت مولاك. If you find dunya, right, it's coming to you, you worship Allah. وإن زويت عنك انقلبت على عقبك ومتى تلقتك الزلازل والمحن وصدتك عن دينك فلست بصادق في عبادتك. So if you're a sunshine worshipper, let's call it that, so when things are nice and things are easy and Allah is giving you things and two-car garage and you have the cul-de-sac house and the picket fence and all those things that people dream about, and you have all of those things, then you're happy. But you lose your job, the mortgage bill is coming, you're not able to pay it, and then you're not happy anymore, and you have shukuk, and you have doubts about Allah's promises and about Allah's ability to lift you out of the situation. انقلبت على عقبك. Then you flip on yourself, your heart flips. And then when these earthquakes and these tribulations come to you, and then they stop you from your deen, then you were not truthful, you were not sincere in your ibadah of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is what's mentioned in the verse, وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَعْبُدُ اللَّهَ عَلَى حَرْفٍ. There are people who worship Allah ala harf, in other words, on an edge. فِإِنْ أَصَابَهُ خَيْرٌ اطْمَأَنَّ بِهِ. If something of good comes, اطْمَأَنَّ بِهِ, then their heart is tranquil and they're reconciled to it. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ فِتْنَةٌ انْقَلَبَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. وَإِنْ أَصَابَتْهُ فِتْنَةٌ. But if a trial or tribulation comes, أَصَابَتْهُ انْقَلَبَ عَلَى وَجْهِهِ. It literally means to flip on their face, but it means your whole kind of equilibrium is upset. And this is what we call jaza, or panic. And you lose all balance, and you lose all principled practice of your deen, and you look for hiyal, and you look for ways out of the situation that you're in, because this is an emergency, and who needs to talk about the sharia, and who needs to talk about principles and so forth? I'm in a bad spot, and so I need to get out of it. انقلب على وجهه خسر الدنيا والآخرة. And if that happens, خسر الدنيا والآخرة. Then you lose both dunya, because the dunya got taken away from you, and on top of that, you lost the akhirah. ذلك هو الخسران المبين. This is the clear loss. And this is from Surah Al-Hajj, ayah 11. So I will stop here. Inshallah, we didn't quite finish this section. It's a longer one. I think probably by the next session we'll finish it. And then we'll look at the different adab. So the adab, the comportment with one's nafs, one's self, and with creation, and then with Allah. And then we'll get into more of the deeper issues with spiritual refinement and discipline. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. So if you have any questions, please write them, but also I'd like to take this moment to remember one of our great ulama who passed away in Cape Town today, Sayyidina Sheikh Siraj Hendricks, who was the head of the Zawiya Institute and who was, radiallahu anhu wa rahimahullah, a student of Muhammad Ali al-Maliki, so the Sheikh of our Sheikhs, so to speak. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala raise him in degrees. May He give his family and his students and all those who love them sabr and silwan. ويعظم أجرهم. May raise their reward and increase their reward and give them sabr and give them patience and give them solace in this difficult time with his passing. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put him amongst those that he has blessed before us. من الذين أنعم عليهم من النبيين والصديقين والشهداء والصالحين وحسن أولئك رفيقا وارزقه بأهل غير من أهله ودار غير من داره واغسله بالماء والثلج والبرد كما ينقى الثوب الأبيض من الدنس. اللهم إن كان محسنا فزد في إحسانه وإن كان غير ذلك فتجاوز عن سيئاته وادخله الجنة بغير حساب ولا عتاب بمنك وفضلك وكرمك وجودك يا أرحم الراحمين. وإلى حضرته وحضر النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم الفاتحة.